Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into some complex ideas, ancient texts, and maybe find some surprising insights along the way.
Absolutely. And today, we're tackling something that feels like, well, a real paradox.
Yeah, exactly. You have this legal tradition that really emphasizes unity, divine mercy.
Mhm.
But then within it, there's this law. It's so stark, so seemingly harsh.
It really makes you stop and think.
It does. It forces you to question, well, what you thought you knew about compassion in this context. So today we're doing a deep dive into Parashat Ki Teitzei. That's one of the weekly Torah portions from Deuteronomy.
Right.
And we're focusing on this specific section. Let's call it the rebel, reject or rescue.
Mm-hmm. It's an ancient text, obviously, laying out this, rich tapestry of laws.
But this one law just,
Yeah.
it really stands out, doesn't it?
It really does.
So our mission today really is to explore that tension, between these strict-sounding ancient laws and then these profound stories of divine compassion that you find in the very same tradition.
Yeah, finding the connection, or maybe the contrast.
Exactly. We'll unpack the infamous Rebellious Son law. We need to look at its historical context, understand how the ancient sages interpreted it, which is pretty surprising.
Oh, definitely.
And hopefully see how it all reveals something bigger, maybe a majestic truth about, the human condition and God's commitment, perhaps, to rescue over rejection.
Sounds like a plan. Where do we start?
Well, let's get a sense of Ki Teitzei itself first, because this one portion is packed. 74 of the Torah's 613 commandments are in there.
Wow, 74. That's a lot for one section.
Yeah.
Almost 12%.
It is. And
Wow.
it covers, just about everything. How to treat a captive in war, the beautiful captive.
Right.
Practical stuff like rooftop safety, laws about lost and found property.
Mm-hmm. Things you wouldn't even think needed a specific law.
Exactly. Prohibited mixtures, wool and linen together, that kind of thing. Wearing tzitzit, the ritual fringes.
Camp hygiene, making sure workers get paid fairly.
Right. Workers' wages. And even that really heavy command to remember Amalek.
So it's this incredibly comprehensive legal framework for the community. Justice, order, holiness.
Precisely. And it's right in the middle of all that.
Right. Amidst all these diverse laws governing daily life, that this one just grabs you, the rebellious son.
Yeah. So tell us about the actual law. Where do we find it?
Okay, so it's in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 18 through 21.
Okay.
And it lays out this scenario. It says, if a son is stubborn and rebellious, he doesn't listen to his father or mother, even when they discipline him.
Stubborn and rebellious.
And it gets more specific. He's described as a glutton and a drunkard.
So specific behaviors are named.
Right. And if this happens, the parents are instructed to bring him to the elders at the city gate.
The elders, the leaders of the community.
Yeah. And then the text says, the men of the city shall stone him to death.
Wow. Stoning.
Yeah. And the purpose is stated right there. So you shall burn away the evil from within you, and all Israel shall hear and fear.
Okay, let's just sit with that for a second. That's jarring.
It is. No question.
It immediately brings up these huge kind of uncomfortable questions, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, first off, can a young person really be judged that severely? And is it for what he's done or partly for what they think he might do? His potential future sins.
That's a deep question. Judging potential.
And what about the parents and the community? What's their role in guidance if this is the ultimate?
Where does that responsibility shift?
Yeah, where does parental responsibility end? And where does this communal judgment, this incredibly dire judgment, begin?
And the big one.
The big one. Is this meant literally?
Well,
Or is it more of a moral warning, a deterrent that's meant to shock you into thinking, rather than something you'd actually do?
right. It's a passage that absolutely demands we look deeper. We can't just read it and move on.
No way.
And, when you put it in the broader context of the legal system back then,
Right.
this law, the rebellious son, while it feels uniquely shocking to us, maybe, it wasn't entirely alone in its severity.
Meaning other offenses carry the death penalty.
Yes, quite a few did. And often, interestingly, with that exact same stated purpose, burning out evil from the community.
So that phrase is key. It wasn't just for this one case.
Not at all. It seems to reflect this deep societal concern about maintaining the purity, the holiness of the covenant community.
Okay, like what other examples?
Well, things like worshiping other gods, that was a capital offense.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right? direct violation of the core covenant.
Sure.
Kidnapping or enslaving a fellow Israelite, again, a fundamental violation of community bonds.
Okay.
Murder, obviously, like striking a fatal blow while lying in wait. Adultery.
Right.
Even things like a prophet speaking falsely in God's name or giving false testimony in a capital case where your words could lead to someone else's death.
So serious breaches of trust and divine authority.
Exactly. And remember that story in Numbers about the man found gathering wood on the Sabbath?
Oh, right. He also received the death penalty.
He did. So the rebellious son law, while extreme, fits into this pattern where certain actions were seen as fundamentally undermining the community's relationship with God and each other.
So hearing that recurring phrase, "you will burn out evil from within you," it really highlights this idea of communal responsibility, doesn't it?
I think so. It's not just about punishing one person.
It's about purifying the whole group, maintaining, like you said, moral and spiritual hygiene for everyone.
Yeah, it establishes this perspective of maybe God the righteous judge, where the community has this heavy responsibility to uphold divine standards.
Even through measures that seem incredibly absolute to us now, protecting the covenant's integrity.
Right. The actions of one person could be seen as jeopardizing the whole.
Okay, but, and this is the big but, isn't it? Because the same tradition, the same Bible, tells other stories. Stories that seem to push back against this idea of just immediate rejection or final judgment.
Absolutely. And a prime example is the story of Ishmael.
Right. Abraham's son with Hagar.
Exactly. That narrative, it's in Genesis 21, starting around verse 9. It's incredibly rich.
So what happens there? How does it connect?
Well, Ishmael, as a young man, is seen doing something described by the Hebrew word metzachek.
Metzachek, what does that mean?
It's ambiguous. It could just mean laughing or playing.
Huh.
But the famous commentator Rashi, centuries later, interprets it much more severely.
How so?
Rashi suggests it means Ishmael was guilty of cardinal sins, like really serious stuff. Idolatry, immorality, maybe even bloodshed.
Wow, okay, so potentially not just harmless fun.
Right, and remember, God had already prophesied earlier that Ishmael would be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone. So there's this pre-existing notion of him being trouble.
Okay, so he's seen as problematic.
Definitely. And Sarah, Abraham's wife, sees this metzachek and gets worried. She convinces Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away, cast them out.
Into the desert, which is essentially a death sentence, right?
Pretty much. And sure enough, their water runs out. Hagar puts the boy under a bush, saying she can't watch him die. It's total despair. Parental rejection, powerlessness.
A truly bleak moment.
But then, this is the crucial part, God hears the boy crying.
Not Hagar, the boy.
The text says God heard the voice of the lad. An angel calls out, reassures Hagar, shows her a well, saves them both.
Wow.
And not only that, but God reaffirms the promise, despite everything, the behavior, the prophecy, the abandonment. God promises to make Ishmael into a great nation.
So, okay. What's the takeaway here? We've got this son, Ishmael, who is perceived as rebellious, maybe even dangerous. His family literally casts him out to die.
Yes.
And yet God steps in and rescues him, offers him a future.
Exactly. It puts that rebellious son-in-law into a whole new light, doesn't it?
It really does. Like we said, it's one thing to talk about justice and deterrence in theory.
But thinking about your own child facing death, that's something else entirely.
And this Ishmael story shows divine intervention, divine rescue, precisely when human judgment, even parental love, had reached its absolute limit.
It's a powerful counter-narrative. God steps in where humans had essentially given up.
So did the ancient thinkers, the rabbis, grapple with this tension between the harsh law and this kind of divine mercy?
Oh, absolutely. That's maybe the most fascinating part of this whole discussion. The ancient sages, the ones who compiled the Talmud, they were deeply troubled by the rebellious son passage.
They didn't just accept it at face value.
Not at all. They understood the text, sure, but ethically, morally, it bothered them a lot.
So what did they do?
They discussed it extensively. You find these debates in the Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin mostly. And what they did effectively was interpret the law in such a way. They added so many conditions that it became practically impossible to ever actually apply it.
Really? Like what kind of conditions?
I'll take Rabbi Judah. He said that for the law to even be considered, both parents had to, quote, exactly agree.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
But wait. He defined exactly agree as having the same voice, the same physical appearance, and the same height.
What? The same voice, appearance, and height. That's impossible.
Exactly. If the mother wasn't identical to the father in these, frankly, arbitrary ways, the son couldn't legally be considered a rebellious son under this law.
So they created this ridiculously narrow loophole.
Precisely. It's like they were trying to legislate it out of existence through hyperspecificity.
That's incredible. Were there other interpretations like that?
Oh, yeah. Rabbi Simeon was even more blunt. He basically asked rhetorically, just because their son gorged on meat and Italian wine, would the father and mother really have him stoned?
Good question.
And his answer was definitive. Rather, there never was and never will be such a thing. Full stop.
So he just declared it never happened and never would.
Pretty much. He concluded the law was written, quote, so that you may study and receive reward. Meaning, its purpose wasn't action, it was contemplation. Moral reflection.
Study it, think about it, learn from it, but don't do it.
Exactly. Now, some sources mention Rabbi Jonathan claiming he actually saw one case or sat on the grave of one.
Oh.
Which adds a bit of intrigue, maybe shows it wasn't unthinkable to everyone. But even if true, it highlights how incredibly rare it must have been. It confirms our Simeon's main point about its impracticality.
So mostly seen as a theoretical exercise, a teaching tool.
Largely, yes. And then there's Rabbi Jose the Galilean's ethical take.
Okay, what was his view?
He suggested the Torah, in its divine foresight, foresaw his ultimate destiny.
Meaning?
He imagined this son, the glutton and drunkard, would eventually waste all his family's money, become destitute, and then turn to crime, like robbery, to feed his habits.
A downward spiral.
Right. So RSA interpreted the law as saying, essentially, let him die while he's still relatively innocent, before he commits those worst crimes and dies truly guilty.
Wow. That reframes it completely. It's not punishment for being a glutton, but a grim sort of preventative measure against future greater evil.
Exactly. It turns the law into this powerful, albeit extreme, warning about where that kind of lifestyle could lead. A deterrent focused on potential future destruction, not just creant behavior.
So the sages really, they defanged the law, didn't they?
That's a good way to put it.
Turning it from this stark command into something much more complex. A tool for ethical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think differently about that original verse too. They discipline him, but he does not listen. Maybe it's less about the son's irredeemable guilt.
And more about the parents' desperation, their feeling of helplessness.
Exactly, which, resonates with modern ideas about dealing with troubled youth. Empathy, support, guidance, not just harsh punishment. The sages were kind of pushing in that direction, weren't they?
In their own way, yes. They transformed it into a profound ethical discussion.
Okay, so if human wisdom, through these sages, found ways to make the law essentially impossible to enact, what about God's perspective? If humans were pushed towards non-rejection, what's the divine stance on a rebellious child?
Now we get to the heart of it, perhaps. This is where the focus shifts dramatically from human law and judgment to divine compassion.
How so? Where do we see that?
We see it powerfully in the prophets and the Psalms. God steps into this role of the true shepherd, the true father.
Okay.
Think about Ezekiel chapter 34. God says, indeed, I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out. I will seek what was lost and bring back what was driven away, bind up the broken, and strengthen what was sick.
Wow. Searching for the lost, bringing back the driven away.
It's God's direct response, isn't it, to that very scenario of parents feeling they've lost control, maybe feeling they have to reject their child.
So when human efforts fail, or when parents feel they have to let go?
God steps in. God seeks. God restores. God heals. The ultimate rescuer.
That's a powerful image. Is there more?
Definitely. Look at Psalm 27. King David writes this incredibly personal line, verse 10. Though my father and mother may reject me, the Lord will take me in.
The Lord will take me in, even if parents reject.
Exactly. It's not just poetry. It's a profound theological statement about unconditional divine acceptance.
A relationship that holds even when human ones break down.
Precisely. It tells us that God's love, God's embrace, isn't dependent on our perfect behavior. It doesn't get withdrawn when we mess up, when we stumble, even when we act like, rebellious children.
So putting it all together, the law, the Ishmael story, the sages' interpretations, these prophetic verses, what's the ultimate message emerging?
I think it becomes this truly majestic truth. God never rejects us. Not really. Not finally.
The gates of repentance are always open, as they say.
Exactly. That signifies a divine relationship that, unlike our fragile human ones, fundamentally cannot be broken from God's side. We might turn away. We might reject God.
But God never rejects us.
Yeah.
His hand is always outstretched.
That's the core message. We might be stubborn, rebellious children like the one in the law, but God remains our ever-accessible parent, always there.
So that narrow, difficult legal passage about a specific type of troubled youth.
It expands through all this context and interpretation into something universal about God's enduring love and grace for everyone.
A message of hope, unconditional acceptance.
I believe so.
Okay, so we've really gone on a journey here. We started with this, frankly, shocking biblical law.
Very stark.
Then we saw how ancient sages, troubled by it, use interpretation to emphasize compassion, to make it almost impossible to apply literally.
Finding the ethics within the letter of the law.
And then we arrived at this overarching message of divine mercy. God as the ultimate rescuer, the one who never rejects.
Yeah, what looks like judgment on the surface becomes this profound teaching about enduring divine love.
And it really highlights the importance for us maybe to seek that same kind of understanding and compassion in our own lives, right?
It certainly challenges us.
It's been a deep dive that definitely shifts your perspective.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a pretty significant question to ponder, doesn't it?
Oh, what's that?
Well, if the real point of the rebellious son law, as the sages suggested, was moral reflection, thinking about the path not taken, deterring future harm,
Okay.
then what does that teach us today about how we view people we might see as lost or rebellious in our own families, our communities?
How should we react?
Does God's consistent act of rescue, of never giving up, inspire our actions? Does it push us towards reaching out, trying to understand, offering guidance, instead of just, rejecting or writing people off?
That's a powerful thought to end on. How does divine rescue inspire human action?
Something to reflect on.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this exploration has sparked some new insights into these complex ancient texts.
And given you something meaningful to think about.
Definitely. Until next time.